So, I know I and the clients that I've worked with, I'm not the only one that faces this procrastination challenge sometimes where you're looking at the giant messy house or the huge unfinished project with a looming deadline and you just freeze. You shut down, you cannot imagine even where to get started, and you procrastinate because it's so overwhelming that it seems pointless to even begin. Welcome to the Procrastination Unchallenge, where each day I give you a little mini experiment to try to shift your dynamics with procrastination. I'm Dr. Rebecca Block, neuroaffirming executive function coach, author, and researcher. So, what's a mini experiment you can try if you are procrastinating on something that feels overwhelming? I'm sure that you've already heard the advice of just shrink it down, but the problem with that kind of vague advice is often that then triggers not only the overwhelm procrastination, but then the confusion type of procrastination we were talking about yesterday, where it's like, I don't even know what it looks like to shrink it down. So how is it that I would shrink it down? Now I'm doubly procrastinating to avoid the overwhelm and to avoid the confusion of figuring out what it would mean to shrink it down. So an option one mini experiment for the just shrink it down approach is if you have an activity that could theoretically be endless, right? So say you're writing a really long form thing like a dissertation or a novel or a huge project for work. Time bound the shrinking. What is the amount of time you could imagine spending on that project today that doesn't make you want to sit in a corner crying? Is it 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes? A deliberately really small amount that is not going to finish the project, but is enough that you feel like you could get that started. For me, a classic example of this is what's called the 5-minute room rescue. The first time I learned about that, it was such a game changer for me because I really hate cleaning. As you all know, anybody who's been following me for long already knows this. And when somebody introduced the 5-minute room rescue, it was like you just set a timer for 5 minutes. You put on, because it's not a thought-based task, you put on some music that you like listening to, and you clean until that timer goes off. And what I found was it shrunk the overwhelm of, oh my God, where do I start in all of this mess and all of this cleaning that needs to happen, to just 5 minutes. Okay, I'm going to start in this corner of this room, or I'm going to start with just my desk. And then looking and seeing what I was able to get done in that 5-minute room rescue typically gave me enough energy to set another timer and another timer and another timer and to keep going for about an hour. But it wouldn't have been if I had started off with the goal of going for an hour. And I have to continue to remind myself of that every time I use that trick, is that no, I really have to mean the 5 minutes. I really have to mean that I can keep it that short and that that's okay. Option 2 for a mini experiment on shrinking overwhelm, if time bound is not something that works for you, is to instead pick the smallest first task for that project. That smallest first task might be what we were talking about yesterday of just defining what does good enough look like by when. And that's the only thing you do. You don't set it up for anything else other than that. You decide, I'm just doing that smallest first task. Or that smallest first task might be making an actual more specific task list for that project, right? So instead of it just being, I need to clean the house, it's let me break it down into each of the individual things, and maybe if that gives me energy, then I start to decide what days I'm going to do that or how I'm going to do those individual things. Sometimes making task lists can make things feel more overwhelming. If that's you, then instead of it being that my smallest first task is to list out everything to do for this project, instead is I'm just going to pick one part of this project that I do know how to do, and I'm just going to do that until that part is done. The key is to pick something that is small, right? So something that you are confident that your current levels of energy and time will allow you to finish, because you want to be able to get to that place of feeling good about something that energizes you to make it so that you are less likely to procrastinate with that project going forward. Okay, hopefully this video itself has not been too long and overwhelming and giving you choices that feel empowering rather than feeling like you're drowning. If I got that wrong though, and there's some other way I can help, reach out in the comments and let me know.